First of all, my name is Jim Thompson. I'm the president and CEO of the InSource Group. And as most of you are probably aware, we are an IT staffing company. And for the past 27 years, we've been helping clients in Dallas find top technical talent. Now, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for our panel discussion today, the subject of which is employer branding. Now, why might that be significant in this environment? Well, let me share a few statistics with you. First of all, the U.S. economy grew at 3.5% last year. Unemployment is at a 40-year low, and there are currently 6.8 million jobs open in this country. So those statistics would lead anyone to conclude that there is a war for talent taking place in this economy. On some days, I feel like all 6.8 million of those job openings are in Dallas, and I'm trying to find candidates for every one. It is a rather extraordinary statistic, but it's incumbent on all of us, regardless of what side of the talent acquisition equation we're on, to search for every competitive advantage that we can put at our disposal. And that's where this whole issue of employer branding comes into play. 72% of recruiting professionals agree that employer branding makes a significant difference in the talent acquisition process. And in excess of 78% of the candidates will go out and check on employer brands before making a decision with respect to who to choose as their next employer. So I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion on a topic that I need to learn a whole lot more about. And with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for today's discussion, Mr. Julian Messina. Julian is a 12-year recruiting professional on both the corporate and the technical side. Most recently, he has spent 7 years as manager of talent acquisition at Bottle Rocket, which is one of the most premier mobile development companies in the world. And in addition to that, he is a ubiquitous presence on social media, primarily as a result of his creation of the podcast Pathways to Success. I think to date the number is 142 episodes, which are available to you free of charge if you should be so interested on Apple iTunes. Julian is a native of Dallas and a graduate of the University of North Texas, which they used to call North Texas State when I was in college. But please join me in welcoming Julian Messina.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Did you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Julian Messina. As Jim said, I'm a senior talent acquisition professional. I am the host of the Pathways to Success podcast and the founder of the Pathways to Success training company. Now, one of my mentors once told me, Julian, whenever you give any kind of public facilitation, you want to try to get your audience from formal to informal as quickly as possible. Because the truth is, we all do seem to learn more effectively whenever we're at ease. And because of this, I want to try a short social experiment. Now, I've never done this in a dining situation, so everyone please take caution. So number one, if you have something on your lap, let's go ahead and set it onto your table so it doesn't get in your way. Number two, I'd like everyone to take out their cell phones. Now, for the next 60 seconds, we're going to play a song. And during that song, you're going to take as many selfies with the people around you. I play a song, you selfie it up, wrap it up in 60 seconds. 3, 2, 1, go. 60 seconds is up. Let's go ahead and get back to our seats. How was that?
I think you should get credit for thinking.
Wow, we should just do that the entire time, huh?
Technology for good.
All right, so for me, I like to do things with purpose and intentionality. So I do have 2 calls to action with what we just did. Number 1, some of the best experiences I have from these networking events are getting to know the people around you. And for me, even though I'm a recruiter, I still have apprehension about reaching out to strangers. Well, now you have a meaningful piece of content to break the ice and get to know the people around you because you have their faces in your phone. Number 2, when you start to post those pictures on social, I want you to tag the InSource group and Buena Braza and tell everyone how great of a time that you're having here. So, as far as this topic goes, I'm very new to the world of full-time entrepreneurship. And as Jim mentioned, for the last 7 years, I've actually overseen talent acquisition for BottleRocket. Who here has heard of BottleRocket? So BottleRocket is one of the world's premier mobile development firms. We made the apps for companies like Starwood Hotels, Coca-Cola Freestyle, ESPN, just to name a few. And when I joined BottleRocket 7 years ago, I experienced an interesting phenomenon. And that phenomenon was, I had droves of world-class talent beating down my door trying to get a job at BottleRocket. And not only were they beating down my door, they stayed. So for me, I saw the real tangible benefits of an employer brand in action. It allowed us to attract and hire some of the best talent in the world and retain them. And especially in today's brutal candidate market, we need every single tool that we can use to find and keep the best talent out there. And we have 2 incredible experts with us today, and I'm excited to introduce them to you now. First, we have Jessica Flippo, and she is the Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition and Employer Branding at Zoe's Kitchen. She's a veteran recruiter with over 11 years of experience and has built her expertise in both agency and corporate recruiting. The strategies Jessica has implemented for Zoe's Kitchen has led to a greater awareness in employer brand, quadrupling the number of LinkedIn followers, and a measurable increase of applicant inflow. Using simple and cost-effective strategies, she believes any company can build their employer brand and draw in great talent. Everyone, please welcome Ms. Jessica Flippo. And next we have my personal hero. His name is Craig Fisher, and he's a bona fide expert in employer branding, candidate experience, and all things talent acquisition. His digital branding methods have been adopted by best practices by companies like LinkedIn, Zappos, Young Brands, Hootsuite, and many more. He's the author of Inbound Recruiting and a popular keynote speaker at tech, social, media, HR recruiting, and sales conferences worldwide. He's been detailed in the Wall Street Journal, NPR, Mashable, NBC News, and the Huffington Post as a subject matter expert in multiple areas of talent acquisition, and is listed among HR and recruiting's top influencers and most engaging conference speakers. Craig is also the founder of TalentNet, the largest recruiting conference series in the Southwest. Give it up, Mr. Craig Fisher.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. It's great to be here. I just have a few more things to say about myself.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cover 3 main topics today. The first will be employer branding strategy. The second will be employer branding execution. And the final piece will be candidate experience. And if we have time at the end, we'll make sure to do some Q&A. Is that cool? Cool. So Jessica and Craig, before we get kicked off here, is there anything that you'd like to say?
I think you might have said it all. I'm not sure.
All right.
I just want to thank InSource Group for having us today. InSource and I go way back, and I'm glad to be a part of this. Thanks, Julian, for inviting us, and great to be here with Jessica.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump right in. So we can start for the same premise. I want to start from definitions. So Craig and Jessica, what exactly is the definition of employer branding?
Kick it off? Okay. So employer brand for at least Zoe's Kitchen, and what we really target is making an authentic and emotional connection, wanting to really showcase who we are as an employer and hopefully become an employer of choice. So it's about that storytelling. So how do we really showcase who we are through many different platforms or infographics or whatever it is we even have up potentially in our restaurants? Does that really draw people in and give them a little bit of a snapshot into our overall company and culture and what we stand for with our core values?
So I look at it from a little different lens. I have been a talent acquisition leader at a big tech company. I worked for CA Technologies and was over employer brand and recruitment marketing. But I think at its best, employer branding is what the employees of a company feel about the organization, and the best parts of that can be exhibited to the outside world to help attract that talent. Transparency is always good. Always admit the tough things about your organization that you're working on. And as hiring managers, it's important that you convey the proper employer brand by properly telling your prospects and the people you're interviewing what the job is actually going to be like. Because your biggest source of turnover is that failed expectation.
So why do you think this particular conversation is timely right now at this point in time?
Well, I think, as we talked about at the very beginning, kicking it off, it's, super low unemployment rate out there, right? There's a lot of people employed and only really passive candidates, right? So you've got people that aren't going to leave their job unless it's the perfect thing. And you have to show them that it's that perfect thing. And like Craig mentioned, for us, and one of the things I think we'll probably talk about later, is the time spent on the front end really understanding the job from a TA perspective so that we can only bring forward those candidates that know the good, bad, and ugly about the job, the company, whatever, and they're going to be, that perfect fit, because candidates aren't going to leave just for anything anymore, especially in this moment in time. So for us, that's why it's super important that we really edge out our competition to draw people out of the job that they think is already great for something that could be even more impactful for their career.
I think, and likewise, just continuing what she said, that the employer brand should also be good at setting the proper expectation for those people who are not a good fit for the organization. Because we get too many applicants that aren't accurate. And unfortunately, the data is starting to show that most job applicants don't pay a whole lot of attention to your employer brand at the top of the funnel. They just apply, and don't engage with all this great, cool marketing stuff that we do until they get further into the process. So we need to try to do a good job of narrowing that funnel early on.
So when I was first introduced to the topic of employer branding, I always thought of it as an attraction perspective, right? But is there real evidence that it does help retention? Jessica?
Yeah, 100%, 1,000% really, because if candidates really know exactly what they're getting themselves into, like Craig mentioned, they're going to stay. It's really that first 90 days, right? So is the job what I was told it was going to be? Is the company what I was told it was going to be? And as hiring managers, as TA professionals, we're the ones telling the candidates all of those things, right? So is that going to marry up at the end of the process when they come to work for us? And it's super impactful that we're really honest and that we're not just selling people because we need to get that job filled. It's important that we're making sure they are the perfect fit on every level.
Yeah, and one of the things that a lot of younger workers say today, which, of course, our future workforce, is that prestige about their job and their organization is almost as important as salary and growth. And so if we do a good job of selling the employer brand internally as well as externally, we've got a better chance of keeping those people around longer.
Awesome. Question for Craig. Craig, so you've consulted with many companies. What are the commonalities of the companies that you consider to have the best employer brands?
So the companies with the best employer brands are active, transparent, and amazing communicators. Okay, so if you think of brands like L'Oreal that win lots of candidate experience awards and have a good reputation for hiring, people stay a long time, low turnover, that sort of thing, they're constantly talking from their employees' point of view to the outside world. They have regular Facebook Live events where they bring in different people from different parts of the organization for kind of a video podcast to just talk about jobs. And so they do more job branding almost than employer branding, which I think is really key.
Question for Jessica. What would you say is the actual strategy behind Zoe's Kitchen's employer brand?
Well, for us, in the beginning, it was really about knowing what we stood for, really self-identifying, spending the time to really know what it was that we wanted to put out there and what we wanted to stand for. That really changed the game for us when we spent that time really actually creating core values that weren't just words on paper, that were really an emotional connection to not only our employees, but could also pull at the heartstrings of those that are looking for an employer of choice. So we really sought out to, as Craig even mentioned, more of the job branding. We added our values to the very top of our job description. That is the number one criteria for coming to work at Zoe's, is that you are those 5 things. Not that you become them, you already are those 5 things. And all of our interview guides, every interview that someone goes through, at least half, if not all, of the entire interview is going to be based on, do they fit those core values, not just the skill set. It's way more important that they fit our company, our culture, our values, than they have skills on paper. And once we got our hiring managers to say, hey, yeah, I'm willing to give up this technology or this, degree even or certification, once they let go of those things and recognize that hiring for culture fit and core value fit was going to be the thing that was going to get people to stay longer, that changed the game for us. It really upped our overall talent pool and we got some really great hires. So just changing that one piece, that's one of many things that we did, but that alone probably made the most significant impact. Gotcha.
So when you and I had lunch, Jessica, to do kind of like the prep for this, one of the things that you kept saying is that, you discovered your values. So if a company has not been intentional about figuring out what their employer brand is and they're starting from scratch, and this question is for both of you, where do you start? How do you start to figure out what are the flags that you want to plant to build your employer brand off of?
So marketing people will tell you that it starts with your EVP, your employer value proposition. But I don't agree with that at all. That's like a slogan that's created in a conference room. You have to start with surveying your employees and finding out what's actually great about the organization. It needs to come from the inside out and be organic. Find out what the high points are and where you need to work on those things. And those are the things that you need to bring to the surface and build your employer brand around.
Yeah, and as Craig mentioned, our values were written by our own employees. We did a value summit, and we brought in people from all over the country in all different positions that work for us, and got them in a room for 3 days and really helped articulate what they felt about working at Zoe's. What are their feelings? What are those words that come to mind? And we already had values, but they weren't legit. They weren't really summing up who we were. And they had a lot of layers in there and a lot of really crazy words that I think a lot of companies use when they write values, probably 10 or so years ago, like we did. So redoing those and it really being authentic words coming from our people. What we saw was outside candidates said, oh my God, that is me. That is me to a T. That you could not have described me better. So it really has made all the impact. So if you can take the time to do the values and you can get the buy-in, it's certainly worth it, but they have to be real and legit and come from your own people.
So not necessarily from leadership, but from
Correct.
the people in the company.
Not at all from leadership. No offense to any
Is there an element that they should play in terms of
Absolutely.
infusing what those are? And if so, what are
I think
they?
the role that they play is the buy-in behind it. That does start from the top down, and if you can, as professionals, get that buy-in from your company, that hey, our values. I've worked here for 5 years. Maybe you're saying to yourself, and these values don't really resonate with me, or they don't really make sense to the company we now are. And you can get those higher ups to look at that and say, yeah, you know what? You're right. I mean, that's what happened to us is we started to really turn that around and say, is this us? It's not us. And they then played that more integral role in saying, who should we bring together from the summit? Who should write our values? And they themselves came up with the idea that it should not be them. It should be a mix of people from all levels. And certainly they play a part in really making that happen. But they're at a different level when you're high up. I think you see the company in a different perspective through a different lens versus for us being in the restaurant industry, people on the front line that are serving food to guests every day. So I think that having those individuals write our values made the most impact. And higher up still said, God, that's still me, even at a C level. But most of the people that wrote our values were hourly employees, managers in the restaurants, salespeople out in the workforce for us, our catering salespeople. So.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a big takeaway.
Yeah.
Craig, anything to add on that?
So yeah, I'll say that leadership plays an important role with the buy-in, as Jessica said, but most leaders are temporary, to be real honest. And so their version of employer branding is more like a campaign. It's a short-term goal. They want a short push and a short bump, and you have to be in it for the long game. You can't say, we're hiring these types of people one day, and this is who we are, and then, the next year say, oh, this is who we are. I agree with rewriting and reevaluating your values every year and letting your employees help do that. But there has to be an overriding message that leadership buys into for the long term, and that goes all the way to the board of directors if you're a publicly held company, because otherwise you're letting short-term leaders make long-term decisions that they don't really care about.
So who typically owns this? Is it marketing? Is it recruitment? Jessica, I know you kind of do a little bit of both. Like, where does this start and who perpetuates this?
Well, for us, we actually have, now she's in a different position, but have a role that's life services manager, and that role is solely focused on culture, rolls up through HR, at the time into our director of HR, and that is a true, dedicated peer to me. So a lot of collaboration, I'll tell you, not just from the values, but all the way through the candidate experience and the onboarding experience. I spend a lot of time with this culture expert. So not every company is fortunate enough to have an investment in that type of role. But I would say it's whoever is really that guiding force for people. And a lot of times that ends up being in HR. I would say not, in my opinion, not marketing at all.
Interesting. Craig?
Yeah, I say corporate marketing is about consumer brand or B2B brand, right? And that's the way it should be. I find that if recruitment marketing and employer branding sits in recruiting, but has some marketing and branding expertise there, and guided by what we're now seeing as emerging jobs like chief people officer, then marketing ends up coming to recruitment and talent acquisition to say, that's really cool, we want a piece of this. And then you start to get the buy-in to do bigger things. So, if you're doing employer branding, encourage your people in recruitment to make this a focus, have it be a specific function, and ask permission later a little bit, because marketing will come around, because if you showcase your people, that's the number one thing you can sell.
So Craig, you said it should be owned by talent then?
It should be owned by talent, yes,
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So Craig, having worked with like all these different companies and just looking out into the marketplace, if we were to point to examples and perhaps like see that as a model, what company or companies do you think have the best employer brands out there?
Right, so this is a fun question. If you think about the companies that people most want to work for, just statistically, Apple, Google, Facebook, etc., they don't actually talk much about what it's like to work there, right? I mean, you don't hear that much about it. And so there's this mystique around companies who don't have to try. Think about Amazon. Amazon had a terrible employer brand for a long time, but people are still clamoring to get in there, right? And so it's the companies that aren't necessarily as sexy, that don't have that overwhelming advantage, that have to work hard for a good employer brand. You know, Lowe's does a really good job of hiring versus the behemoth, which is Home Depot. And so I see companies like that have sort of a distinct size disadvantage that still do a really good job of attracting people that are my favorites.
So you mentioned Amazon not necessarily having a good employer brand. So let's say that there's companies out there that need kind of a turnaround for it. Where does that company start? Right. So if you need to turn around your brand, certainly ask for some consulting help first, right? Now, I'm a consultant, so this is sort of self-serving, and I don't mean it that way. I also am the head of marketing for Allegiance Global Solutions, which is the largest staffing firm in America, and for the RPO and MSP division, not for the whole company. That's a big company. But I get to see a lot of different companies, and I get to see a lot of what they do right and what they do wrong. And so the first thing a company should do is ask for some outside help to get some eyeballs that aren't inside the organization on what that brand looks like from the outside. And that's when I say consulting help is really a good start. Jessica, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, we actually use a consulting firm to help us even rewrite our values.
Oh, wow.
And they helped us, come up with the summit idea. They really led us through that process. And then they helped us, work with our marketing team to design, what the values look like on paper. So looking for someone outside that can really, help you through it is for sure where I would start if you have the resources. Not everyone does, or maybe doesn't have the buy-in to spend the dollars on that, but I think that if you can, start looking around on different platforms to see what people are saying about you, you can gather a lot of information, right? If you're getting offer turn downs, if people are leaving quickly, something's not right? So you've got to do a little bit of research. I think it's way better if you can have a consultant help you with that. But again, if you don't, just look at Indeed reviews, look at your Glassdoor reviews. There are plenty of websites out there where you can gather information. For us, and I don't know how many companies in here have this, but the customer write-ins, that's a big source of information for us. So like customers may go onto our website and say, like, I had an issue with food, or I was in this restaurant and this happened. That was a really, and still is a really great place for us to gather some information and maybe alter some things if we need to around what our employees are experiencing working for us.
That's a function of your actual website?
It's a function of our actual website. And they can, of
Gotcha.
course, write in on social. Look at what people are saying on your Twitter, your Facebook, social media platforms, comments that are being made. That'll tell you a lot.
Gotcha. Anything else from a strategic perspective that we should be aware of?
I think if you have a CRM, that's a candidate relationship management system, where people who used to work for the company reside as sort of its own candidate community or talent community. So what we used to call alumni, I like to call them boomerangs now, because nowadays we might want them back, right? Mm-hmm. There's a real good chance they go off and get some good experience on someone else's dime. We're going to want them back at some point. So let's call them boomerangs. If you can survey that community and say, hey, what was it really like here? What was your experience? Because the people who write Glassdoor and Indeed reviews, by and large, were not happy, right? So you want to get also the opinion of some people who were happy working there and still left. So that's a good way to get some outside perspective.
That's a good tip. Jessica?
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. We get a lot of boomerangs at Zoe's, by the way. People that leave and realize the grass wasn't greener and they come right on back. We tend to have that quite a lot. We do exit interviews, and that certainly gives us a lot of information as people are walking out the door to pursue another opportunity. Most of the time, it's not because they don't enjoy working at Zoe's. We do also ask our current employees to do Glassdoor reviews and Indeed reviews to try to really mix in a lot of those really strong ones, or people on their way out, if maybe they haven't done a review in a while, we'll ask them, hey, it sounds like you enjoyed working here. Would you mind doing that Glassdoor review for us? So, your own people are going to be the best people to tell you what's going on. They are your barometer all day long. So use them.
And if you're going to ask them to do Glassdoor reviews, right after a bonus or
Make sure they're happy.
A promotion is a really good time to do that. Right after they get hired is a really, really good time to do that. They're happy at that point.
We do it at 90 days. We ask them for a review at 90 days.
Awesome. Those are very tactical. Then that's a perfect segue. So let's move into the tactical aspects of employer branding. So let's say that you've done the values exercise and you know the unique things that you are looking to build your brand on, and you've surveyed all of your alumni. What next? How do you start? How do you bring this into fruition?
All right, so I'm a big fan of employee advocacy. There are a million platforms now where you can help your employees talk about work better. You feed them interesting things to pass along to their social networks, and every once in a while something that is about the organization. We're hiring, here's an open job, check out our white paper, here's a culture video, things like that, but also things that will just help the employee grow their networks and grow trust in their own network. So just thought leadership pieces and interesting articles that might benefit them in growing trust in their network. So there's a what's in it for me. And you'll find that your employees' networks don't completely overlap. They only overlap about like that. So you're reaching lots of new people every time someone in your company is empowered to, share things.
So social media is obviously a very important tool when it comes to employer branding. What would you consider to be the best platforms to communicate your employer brand?
The ones we focus on are LinkedIn, Glassdoor, a little bit into Indeed over the last couple of years. That's become a little bit of a bigger one for us. In the beginning, LinkedIn is really where we started. That is an area where we were just really not well known. Our brand was new to the Plano area, coming from Birmingham, Alabama. Nobody really knew who we were. Don't get too close to me, Julian.
Yeah, is that what's going on?
So we really needed to do some work. We had a lot that needed to happen in order for us to draw on people. So by focusing on LinkedIn and really the people we already had, and letting them really take, like Craig said, messages that we created, things that we created specifically that we're sharing on social, specifically on LinkedIn, and then sharing that out. I would say within 6 months we were getting, so many more applicants than we ever did in the beginning when I started at Zoe's. Literally no one would apply to any job I posted when I first started because they didn't know who we were. And so LinkedIn, I would say for sure for us has probably worked the best, but we do put significant financial backing on Glassdoor. As well, because we really want to be able to respond to reviews and use the data and analytics of who's visiting our site, why they're there, what they're looking at, to really try to kind of navigate our employer brand in the right direction.
And what are the paid features of Indeed? I think a lot of people use the free stuff.
I use the free Indeed one.
Yeah.
Indeed, gosh, most company sites on there have more reviews than what you may even have on Glassdoor. So I would tell everyone in the room, if you haven't gone to look at your Indeed company page, it probably exists and you don't know it, and people are leaving reviews on it. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, certainly do. But we use the completely free page for Indeed.
Gotcha, okay.
And LinkedIn will gladly charge you lots of money if you don't want to use the free pages.
Yeah,
so.
we do pay for LinkedIn.
Yeah. But I would add to that and say that depending on what industry you're in, the more social media places can actually be really good too. So if you're in healthcare, for instance, Instagram and Facebook are amazing to help
Snapchat too,
recruit,
right?
Doctors and nurses, and people who may not be on LinkedIn. Hard to find folks, especially some of the non-exempt workers that you're trying to reach out to. You're going to find them on LinkedIn, Snapchat, Twitter even, and Facebook. And it's so easy now to target ads to specific audiences. And I actually like to go through Instagram first because then it automatically creates a Facebook campaign. And it's just real easy. So I think using and sharing on those sites is important as well because they're more visual, right? And you can kind of see a snapshot of what the culture of the organization looks like.
So social media feels like kind of the automatic go-to when it comes to communicating your personal brand. are there ways that not a lot of people talk about that are effective in promoting it, perhaps offline?
I mean, yeah, there are, and outside of social, I mean, for us, one was even just our careers page. We actually saw like a huge increase of people coming directly from our website to apply. That happened several years ago, and what we recognized is our careers page wasn't doing us any favors. And once we really changed that and revamped it, along with our marketing team, it was a big push to overhaul the entire website, but career specific and really speaking to our values and showing videos of who we are and what it's like to work at Zoe's, that for certain upped our game on applicants even more from there. So that's one of the ways for us that we really have, I think, drawn in more people.
Yeah, and I would say that kind of a secret weapon is text campaigns. It seems like dirty pool, but it's not. It's very common. And the majority of job candidates like to be contacted on their personal phone or their personal email. They actually don't like being contacted through social media. Now, if they see a bunch of your ads before you contact them, so you show up in their peripheral vision a lot, and then they get that call or text from you, so much better. But LinkedIn is also great because most people who you connect with have their personal email addresses connected to LinkedIn. So you might not be necessarily just connecting to them through LinkedIn, which they don't like. They'll also, most of them, get that email in their personal email inbox.
Craig, what is the tool for the text messaging?
So Text Recruit is one, and Next, NEXXT, is another good one. Both of those give phenomenal results to drive traffic to hiring events, career fairs, things like that.
And Jessica, you talked about posting videos about the culture. So what role should content play in communicating an employer brand?
Well, I think that, you know, when you can really show like a real world, you know, bird's eye view into the experience, and you can also tell real true stories from people that work at your company that are successful, that's always going to be, you know, I think a part of the interview process that people appreciate. We actually did a really cool video when we did the summit for our values, and I would say that by far in the interview experience was the thing candidates like clamored at. They were like, holy cow, like you did this huge summit, like you really put the time and effort to create these values through your own people. It was something that didn't even cost that much money. Now we do have a dedicated person at our company that is a multimedia specialist and can do some very easy videos for us, but literally I created one on my iPhone back like 2 years ago where I just sat down and interviewed a few people, and you can just easily merge those together and make something great. So I think it certainly, I mean, I think for me personally, if I was looking for a job and I could look at a video and see, you know, some people that are actually successful that work there, hear their stories, hear how they've grown. The Container Store is a brand that does a good job at that too. That is certainly one aspect to the interview process that's going to stand out or help people make an opinion, good or bad, about you.
Great.
Yeah, I would say that video is amazing, right? And those videos should be all over your career site. They should also be uploaded to LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else you can possibly put them to reach the widest audience. But surprisingly, not in an actual job description. A link to a video in a job description is better than an actual video in a job description, and photos are better than videos. So if you can actually embed the photo in the job description, great, show your people, and then a link to those employee videos. Job descriptions are sort of the first thing people see about your organization most of the time, other than your public-facing consumer brand. And so think about that job branding in a real serious way. What you say there affects the types of people that are turned on and turned off. The words you use can affect whether women will be more likely to apply or not, and millennials, and like lots of different types of job candidates. So you need to pay strict attention to that, and there are tools out there that can help you do that.
Gotcha. So as far as the careers page, when you say you click on the link and it takes into a video, where do you house the video typically?
So the video can sit anywhere.
Okay.
It depends on where you're trying to drive traffic. What's your best property, right? If your LinkedIn profile, your company's LinkedIn page is your best property, drive them to videos that sit on that page. If it's your Facebook page, drive them there. But generally it should be your career site. you should have a whole culture section of your career site where all this stuff sits.
So Jessica, you created a pretty amazing result with Zoe's. You took their followers from 2 to 10,000 in less than a year. Tell us a little bit about how you did that and the real benefits of having a social following.
Well, it really started with the buy-in from other people in the organization. Like I said, when I came to Zoe's, I was thrown into, kind of a fire situation where there were a lot of jobs open. We were using, a lot of outside support, and I was really tasked with trying to draw people into the organization and hire them myself. And as I was posting jobs and really not getting a lot of response, I sort of sought out to figure out why that was, because I knew Zoe's as was my client when I was on the agency side and knew how great they were. But I had been told that by the people that worked there, right? And there wasn't really anything out there to really tell me that was the case. So I really spent time talking to leadership within the company, at the time very small amount of people that immediately built a lot of trust in me. And we started creating campaigns through our existing employees. We created infographics just saying basically, follow Zoe's Kitchen on LinkedIn. And we started creating content that really showed what it was like to work at Zoe's and the perks we have. Like at our corporate office, we get catered lunch 4 days a week from Zoe's. Like, who doesn't want that, right? But no one knew that was something that was happening. We all get meal cards where we can eat at Zoe's for free on our own time, but nobody knew that was happening. So just showcasing little perks. Right now we have unlimited PTO. So how do you really articulate that visually on LinkedIn? So we really came up with some categories: people stories, perks and benefits, fun things that we do at the office, new hires, new restaurant openings, and started building kind of a content calendar. And by way of getting our own employees engaged and building us to this 10,000 followers is really what we were, looking to get to. Everyone was so pumped, and we ended up having a huge party. Actually, when we hit 10,000, we had a big, huge cake that said, 10,000 followers, and we had champagne toast because everyone was so bought into us getting there. But it took the right content, and it really did, I think, elevate everything I was trying to do in such a short time. And it really, to be honest, wasn't too much of an effort because when you have an army of people doing it for you, all of those brand ambassadors that work for you, it's not all on your shoulders to really carry the load and make it happen.
Yeah, it really seems like you're showcasing the real human element of it, not
right.
Zoe's Kitchen, the brand and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. What is it like to work here? Not just, Zoe's Kitchen, it's great Mediterranean food.
Right, exactly. So, well, give us some best practices. Let's say that a company gets a negative review on Glassdoor or anywhere else. What's the best way to handle that?
Wow, well, we were definitely in a place where when we got a hold of our Glassdoor account and started responding to reviews, where every now and then we'd get that one, review that just kind of blew your mind. Like Craig said, a lot of people that go on there and do reviews, it's, they're angry or they've been let go, those things happen. And certainly I think the public can kind of see through a lot of that if that's, a one-off review here and there. But as we were responding to the reviews, we started really thinking about how do we really take these reviews and the things we're seeing and put them into action. Just like if we got a customer complaint, we have a whole process where if it's this level, it goes to this person. If it's this level, this person addresses it. And there's a follow-up to it to make sure that it got taken care of. And what I really thought about Glassdoor was, wow, nothing's really happening with these reviews, good or bad. I'm not really doing anything with the data. I'm just really thinking about the outside person looking in. How do I really use these to change something in the company? So I came up with kind of a level, we call them category 1, because it was, I think I told you, a big hurricane year that year. So Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3 situations. And we basically assigned different levels of response to those reviews. So if it fell in a Cat 2 or a Cat 3, that's going to be a higher level person within the organization that's not only going to respond, but now also has the responsibility to take action from what that review said. So if it's something that happened out in the field, we would get a field leadership person to not only respond to that review, but to also then follow up on it, spend time in that restaurant figuring out what went wrong. And look, sometimes these are just people that deserve to get let go, and that certainly can be the case. But how can we learn from these and really take that with us and make impact and change in the organization by way of what people are saying, and not just say, oh, that person deserved it. We want to make sure that we're really taking care of those that exit the organization, and if they have a gripe, let's address it, let's own it, and let's fix it.
I love it. Great.
Yeah, if you have voluntary leavers leaving bad comments on Glassdoor, you've got a problem. And it does absolutely need to be addressed. But most people who leave negative comments just want to be heard. They just want to be acknowledged. And so if you say, hey, thank you so much for your comment, this is absolutely something we're working on, would you like to talk about this offline? And if you can do that and then take it to the next level and communicate with that person, generally they don't come back and leave more bad reviews, because Glassdoor is notorious for this. No offense to Glassdoor, but people will change profiles and go back and leave different reviews, just like Yelp or anywhere else. So all things can be gamed. Plus, if you're a big company, there's a good chance you're paying the protection money to keep everyone else's ads off your profile and things like that. So if you're doing that, you might as well take advantage of the data you get there and your opportunity to post good content to help showcase the good things about your organization. One of the things we did at CA Technologies was we started having managers have exit interviews with the people who we thought were good leaves. In other words, we like those people, we might want them back, they might be voluntary leavers, they weren't on a plan or things like that. But we had managers have an exit interview with them and say, I appreciate you, and give them a card that was signed by the manager just saying thank you. And we started rolling this out in India, and we actually gave a Starbucks gift card with the manager's card and personal phone number, and just something that said to the candidate, hey, when you're settled, wherever you're going, give me a call and let's catch up and grab some coffee on me. I just want to know how you're doing. And that drastically changed our scores. Like over a period of 3 months, we started seeing fewer and fewer really negative comments come up. So we raised our score a couple of points just by having the last interaction with the organization not be with HR and a security guard.
Anything else from an executional standpoint when it comes to employer branding?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things. It's not all about digital. It's not all about message. The thing that we do with brand advocates can be done with physical things. CA Technologies has interesting holidays and benefits that they give, like pet benefits. If you ask for it when you get a new pet, you get a day off for socialization with that pet. And if you lose a pet, if you ask for it, you get a day off for bereavement with that pet. And so we started sending little swag bags for those employees that asked for it, for that day off, or that, for whatever reason. Swag bags that had little pet gear, branded bandana, water bowl, things like that. And a card, just a little postcard that said, hey, congratulations. If you're celebrating and posting pictures online, we'd love to celebrate with you. Hashtag Life at CA. Remember to tag us. So then we'd take the best of those and repost them to our corporate Instagram account. And that was sort of a little, reward for the employees all over the world who actually started doing this when they'd received their swag bag. So we got all this free employee-generated content, and they loved it as much as we loved it. And so we started doing that with new babies, new homes, and lots of other things. And these swag bags are cheap. If you ask HR and procurement, they'll tell you that that's a real doable thing.
Awesome. I love it. So let's close with our final topic, which is candidate experience. So Jessica, what do you think is the one thing that you've done at Zoe's that has been most helpful in improving the candidate experience?
Certainly think it's hard to narrow down to one, but I think that the most impactful piece has really been spending the time on the front end of kind of the job search process with the hiring manager. My team probably spends more time than most, and I think maybe because I came from the agency side, I think when you're on the agency side and you're outside looking into a company, you spend a lot of time learning about the company, the business. You're only going to be able to get that fee if you have the best candidate, right? So we really treat our staffing support that way, where we want to really make sure that we're spending that time on the front and we know exactly what the job is. We know what that department does. We know what that department's impact on the business is. We also spend time in the business, whether it's out in the restaurant or with leadership here at our support center in Plano. But spending that time on the front end, really honing in on the job and knowing exactly what kind of person is going to be the right fit, but also what kinds of things they might be walking into. What are those fires they might have to put out? What are some of the negatives potentially that they could encounter? That has allowed us to be very honest with candidates. And I will tell you, candidates just want to be heard as well. They want to hear from people. They want to have communication back and forth with talent acquisition. And if they're getting a response of, hey, you're not a fit, they're getting turned down, or you're talking through with them on the phone and you're saying you're not a fit because of da-da-da-da, or you're telling them, hey, you're going to walk into all of these things, and they're like, I'm not up for that. I did that in my last job and I can't do it again. Then at least you can mutually walk away, right, and say, hey, at least I told you all these things and you understand why you're not going to enter into the interview process. So I think for the overall experience that candidates have coming into Zoe's in the experience, it's the honesty, it's the transparency, it's the authenticity that we bring. They clamor at that. I mean, I get so many comments or notes even about my own team. Like, they were so honest with me that I pulled my own self out of the process and didn't even want to have to, but I did because I recognized this job isn't the right thing for me. They weren't sitting in that black hole where we just said, oh, we got off the phone and said you're not a fit. We told you to your face you're not a fit, and this is why. And that for us really, I think, has helped on the candidate experience side. And of course, the hiring manager loves that too. But when we're talking straight candidate experience, that has been the thing that we probably get the most feedback about, is almost borderline brutal honesty.
I love it. So I have one more planned question to ask Craig Fisher. After that, we're going to open it up to Q&A. And really, this whole experience isn't even about us, it's about you. And this is just one more way that the InSource Group is looking to create new value for our existing and prospective customers. So start thinking about the questions you'd like to ask our panel. So Craig, you are widely recognized as an expert in candidate experience. Give us your best advice on how we should start to approach candidate experience.
Okay, so candidate experience is all about communication. You can shorten your job application, you can write better job descriptions, you can do all that, but if you don't communicate well with the candidate during the process, you're losing the game, because some of your competitors are starting to do it very well. If you look at a candidate journey map, for most candidates, their lowest points in the process are after they've submitted their resume, because they don't hear back for a while, except for an automated response, and then after their interview. After they interview for the first time, there's no plan. Most candidates aren't told what's going to happen and when, and they don't get an acknowledgement that the interview took place very often. And so look at those two places just to start. And think about how you can communicate better. We actually started putting in a team called Talent Assessors, which would look at every applicant. We found out that most of our customers had thousands and thousands and thousands of applicants. 80% of the applicants were never actually even getting looked at by a person. And that happens a lot because we have these systems, right? These applicant tracking systems that weed out a lot of the candidates, but nothing happens to them except possibly an automated receipt message. And so we had a physical person look at resumes and a team of these folks and put them in yes, no, maybe piles. Yes and maybes were passed on for a different part of the process. And the no's got a personal email from that talent assessor saying, not this time, we appreciate you. Here's a link to our talent community. Please keep in touch, because as your skills grow and our jobs change, we'd like to know about it, and we'd like you to know about it. And I got feedback from candidates saying, I got rejected today. I've been applying to your company for years. I got rejected today by a real person. And it was amazing. And I actually brought that guy in for coffee to my office in Plano, Texas, and said, tell me about this. And it turned out he was just applying to the wrong jobs and wasn't seeing the jobs that he was a good fit for. He wanted a marketing job. And we had a job for him, and we hired him. So it's a nice story. But the reality is, if I hadn't been actively communicating and I hadn't had people actively communicating, then that would have never happened. And we cut our did not contact at all rate by something like 90%, to where everyone within 2 days of submitting their resume got some sort of personal response. And the other thing about that is there are tools now that can help you do this. There are tools like Paradox Olivia, which is a chatbot that can help you talk to candidates and hiring managers and recruiters to remind them to do things in the process. There's tools like Enboarder that can help you from the application process all the way through onboarding to set up check marks on your phone to say it's time to do this, it's time to communicate with this person and that person. And so use the technology at hand to help you be better human people and communicate better with your candidates, and you're going to be well off.
Craig, somebody was talking about this at Talent Ed. I forgot what the actual term was, but it was this idea, I know this kind of sounds disparaging, but recycling candidates who have been declined. Like, there is a kind of a process where you can turn candidates you decline into brand ambassadors for your organization. What was that?
So if you think about your silver medalists, those folks that could be hired at some point but didn't get the job this time, right? That should be a segmented talent community of its own, and should have a different drip marketing campaign to keep those people engaged and talk to them on a regular basis, and make sure that you keep those people top of mind. Because what most recruiters do, what most hiring managers do, even sourcers, they go out to LinkedIn and start looking again fresh every time you get a new job opening. They don't go back to the database of existing folks, hardly at all. And this is one of the reasons that most job applicants don't get looked at, because those applications pile up in our inbox and we just go to the most recent one, or we do a search for the most relevant keywords. We're not actually searching for the best culture fit and the best talent fit, regardless of, like Jessica said, college degree or not, and other things like that. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there.
Awesome. Questions?
So, question on interviewing for culture. What questions are ones that work for you?
Well, ours are behavioral interview style questions that are based on each of the values. So, if you take transparency, for instance, one of our values, you're going to ask a question like, tell me, the last time that you gave someone direct feedback. Tell me about a time that you spoke up with an unpopular opinion. Something that really shows us that this person is prepared to be transparent in their everyday. So we're looking for very specific examples, not the if I was in that situation, I would, what we call the coulda, woulda, shouldas. We want to hear when have you done it, what was it, what was the outcome, what'd you learn from it? So every step in the process, we have a slew of those questions for every level. So our hiring managers are asking those, our VPs, our C-levels, they're asking all those same questions too.
Thank you for your question. Who's next? Yes.
In the marketplace, how important is career growth for individuals? And to that point, what kind of strategies do you use to showcase individuals that have grown within the company and have risen from the bottom up?
I'm going to say that career growth is among the top 3 things people look for in jobs right now. Okay, if you're looking to make a move, you're either looking for money or growth, right? You're either bored or you want more money, and those are the main things. Hating your manager is another thing, but career growth is very important. And so if you think about ways to showcase that, not every organization is extremely vertical, right? A lot of organizations are pretty flat. And so you have to move people around and put them in stretch roles and give them seats on boards and commissions and internal organizations to let them show leadership and highlight those things, because those are soft cultural things that can easily make good stories.
Yeah, and with us being small, career growth can be a little bit limited. So we talk a lot about what type of growth are you looking for? Like Craig said, those stretch assignments. Are you good with maybe a bigger scope, over time your scope changing and growing while your title may not, but your pay will increase, your scope in position will increase. So we really spend a lot of time talking to candidates about what kind of growth specifically are you looking for. And if we are looking for someone that can vertically go up, one of the things that we like to do is really give examples of people we've seen in that department grow so that we can really articulate this has happened, this person went from this to this. We see a lot of people from our field move into our support center and move up through the corporate office. So just being able to articulate some of those stories for sure, I think draws in someone that's looking to grow.
Thank you.
And if you look at companies that are, especially retail type organizations, that's a big theme, right? Subway has sandwich artists that become franchise owners and things like that. There's stories there. You just have to find the good ones.
For social media, and you're talking about CA in particular, but for any of them, who's managing that? Is that somebody out of HR typically, or are you pulling in a marketing person to answer?
It's usually somebody in recruiting or talent acquisition.
So you are doing that direct.
Talent for us, yeah.
Anyone else? Frank?
We talked a lot today about how much HR, marketing, other folks can be involved in this. How much, or where would the hiring manager's roles be in this? We haven't discussed that at all.
Hiring managers should be part of the brand ambassador program, absolutely, okay? Hiring managers should be on video on a regular basis talking about their teams, why someone would want to work with them personally and would want to be on their team. What's interesting about their team and their team members and the jobs that those people do. And then hiring managers also have a big responsibility to toe the line of the organization. If the organization has decided to stop asking about salary history, hiring managers need to stop asking about salary history. If the organization is having high turnover, hiring managers have to set really, really straight and proper expectations when they interview someone about what the job's actually like day to day.
Yeah, and I agree with every single one of those points. And think about your LinkedIn profiles too. That's one of the things that people that are coming to interview on your team are looking at. And one, if your profile is not updated with your current job, that's kind of a no-no, right? It's just a basic. But if you're really speaking to why you enjoy what you're doing, how you run your department, things that they can look at and find commonalities with you or get to know a little bit about you on a personal level before they come in and interview with you, those are all very important factors. So my team actually spends time with hiring managers sitting down, going through their profile. Do you have a picture? Do you have an accurate title? Do you talk about the company that you're with? Are you really articulating what it's like to work for you as a leader? That is, one of the very basic things that you can do to really add value to a candidate's experience.
And LinkedIn is a great place to embed videos, photos, PDFs. PDFs now you can embed, and it works just like SlideShare. You can just slide right through a deck that's about all the culture of your organization. So there's a lot of great opportunities for hiring managers to do their own personal branding. Plus, SEO on LinkedIn is the greatest tool anyone can possibly have. The number one word that job seekers use to look for jobs on the internet is the word jobs. The number one word most people don't have in their own LinkedIn profile is the word jobs. And so if all of you start posting Java developer jobs Las Colinas at XYZ Corporation, your company's going to start coming up in search results for Java developer jobs Las Colinas, XYZ.
Anyone else? Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for Craig Fisher and Jessica Flippo. And of course, on behalf of the InSource Group, we'd like to thank you all very much for coming. Have a great rest of the afternoon.